Terra Bites is for informational and educational purposes only. Nothing on the show is advice. No financial, tax, legal, or any other kind of advice. Nothing we say is an inducement to make a particular investment or follow a particular strategy. Anything you invest in is at your own risk. Do your own research and consult with professionals.
So this is a long video with a lot of information about what happened, some data we dive into, some speculation, some tweets, some socials, fallout, what the projects are doing, where they're looking, where they're going, airdrops, snapshots, proposals, all sorts of stuff, what we're doing as Bytes Digital Group. So lots of information here. It's very long. If you would like to skip to a specific point that you're interested in the description, you'll find timestamps for major and minor sections so you can hop right to where you need to go.
All right, everybody, welcome back to Terra Bites. This might be the last episode of Terra Bites ever. In fact, it might not be the last time you see me or Pete or Joseph, aka Casa Intern over there, but it might be the last time that any of our content is called actually Terra Bites. Obviously, I think a lot of people understand why, and we're gonna basically try our best here to dive into some of the details of what happened during the UST DPEG and the ensuing Luna crash and the contagion that sort of rippled throughout the markets. And we're going to talk about kind of what the future holds, not just for the broader sort of ecosystem and, what is Terra V2 and what are some of the protocols that are moving, but for ourselves as well. As I said, this might be the last episode that's called Terra Bites, but I don't think it'll be the last you see of the three of us and some of the work that we've done behind the scenes. So, that's the intro there, Pete.
Yeah, we're figuring out ways forward, reaching out to so many people, been tracking protocols and projects and where they're going, what they're doing. We're going to share what we can from that in this video. And we agree with so many of the posts that have come out from various protocols. Nexus says the last few days have been beyond painful. Our hearts are with those of you who have been affected by what's happened on Terra. Donku, fellow major content creator on Terra, tired, exhausted, and confused, but still with hope and a firm conviction for the ideas that DeFi and Web3 represent. Do Kwon himself said something similar. He said he still believes a decentralized economy needs decentralized money, but it's clear that UST, at least in its current form, won't be that money. I can't give you anything back of what you lost. I wish I could. I will stay and keep fighting to keep the chain running until the last minute. So Donku's validator, our validator, a lot of validators have stuck around in order to ensure the Terra chain continues working. Many other people expressing similar tweets and similar support, offering similar support to the community and checking in on each other. I mean, how many times have people reached out and asked you, how are you doing? Are you finding a way forward? How's everyone doing? We've been working with our staff here, trying to help find ways forward for everyone here too.
Yeah, I feel like I've aged 5 years in the last 10 days. And it almost got comical with the amount of people reaching out. And I was just like, all right, blah, blah, blah. We're both good. Let's move on to like what we need to actually get stuff done. It's been basically like war for the past, since the DPEG. The initial shock was a couple days. And then from there, Pete and I think we've done a pretty good job scrambling and finding some options. And so we'll talk about our pathway forward. But I think first and foremost, a lot of people curious about, the actual DPEG itself. What did that look like? We've actually got some great data and some analysis from Flipside Crypto, who our friends over there have done an excellent job of kind of tracking some of this. And Joseph, the head data analysis here at Bytes Digital, is going to dive into some of that. So we're excited to see what you got for us, Joseph.
Yeah. So this week we actually got a lot of more indication, more transactions came to light, and there was an in-depth deep dive that Flipside Crypto has kind of provided the community. And I know that throughout everywhere, this disaster has released a lot of information, a lot of stuff has been cropping up, and it's been difficult to kind of just be able to discern what is true and what is right and what is actually going on. So let's look at the first graphic, and this one's going to be detailing the Oracle price feeding for UST. And the blue line is going to be showing you the actual price of Terra UST on-chain, because there is two different price expressions for the UST value. There's always going to be that value that is kept on-chain, and then there's going to be an off-chain value expression as well. And so that on-chain value expression, as you can tell, actually performed relatively well throughout the week. The only time that trouble was starting to kind of crop up was about May 7th. And May 7th is going to be a repeating date that we're going to be covering throughout this entire data analysis. It is the common date that has kind of been leading into why and what happened and what really triggered this entire situation. So on May 7th, 500 million UST was sold, with 205 million sold just being within an hour. Was the selling, or was there also kind of a removal of liquidity that happened as well? So there was an announcement that came out, and Do Kwon has confirmed that there was a liquidity removal from the pool. And we're going to be pulling up a new chart here to kind of just be able to discuss what's going on with the 3 pool and what happened with the actual balance of the assets. A lot of people believe that the removal of the initial liquidity was what kind of triggered it. And while it did signal the transferring of UST to be able to start up the USD, the 4 pool that Terraform Labs was trying to get going, where they would be replacing DAI, this original 3 pool has 3 assets tied to it. It's going to be your USDT, USDC, and DAI. And so those 3 assets are going to be in this balanced pool with UST. And as you can tell, this chart kind of shows you a situation that starts evolving past May 4th, around there. That is when the imbalances actually kind of start changing. The red line represents your UST, and then the black line is going to represent the other 3 curve assets, USDT, USDC, and DAI. On May 6th and May 7th, there was a sharp decline in curve assets that were outside of UST, that were not including UST. And there was actually a brief time where the UST supply in the pool actually upticked, with the rest of the curve assets continuously diving deep down. This next chart is really going to kind of start cluing together what happened in terms of volume. This chart effectively shows you the time lapse of UST being sold. And on May 7th is when the initial liquidity actually started selling. As you can tell, the lines that are actually growing are going to be that purple line that is representing just over that time period how much UST has been sold. Meanwhile, the lighter blue line is going to show you what UST was sold on that given day. On May 7th, there was a convenient amount of 505 million UST that was directly sold, and 205 million of that amount was sold just within an hour. This does raise the suspicion that it could have been coordinated. There is no actual confirmation that this event was coordinated. However, it is a significant indication that since this happened within the same hour, that is a vast amount of liquidity to be sold into the pool to essentially attempt an imbalance. And that imbalance was already happening due to the removal of UST and due to the removal of some liquidity from the 3 curve assets. So the selling was what was contributing to the majority of the imbalancement of the pool. Typically, when the pool is even balanced, anywhere beneath a 90% amount being UST will regain its peg, and it is designed to come back to its original $1 valuation. But when you exceed that 90% is when you get into the territory that in the first chart clearly showed you when the peg was officially lost and ultimately forced the peg to be lost on chain itself. There isn't much indication as to what happened on chain on the Terra blockchain. We're hoping that there's going to be a little bit more data coming across pretty soon, especially once we get more insights into what happened with the LFG and TFL wallets in that time period.
So that initial 100 million UST that you're talking about, that was pulled out of I believe it was like the 3 pool.
Yes.
That was like a pre-announced, or at least somewhat expected move by TFL, right?
Yeah.
To then go and seed that money into the 4 pool, right?
Yes, that was an all anticipated move. It was just conveniently when that first 100 million was removed, there was another amount of curve assets, just hard 3 pool assets, that were also removed at the same time, and there was a little bit of more UST that was removed beyond that. And so that additional UST removal was actually kind of anticipated to help kind of balance the little deviations that were happening in the pool itself. So you would expect that by removing some UST from that pool, you're going to kind of be bringing the peg back, because everything will come back to its like even share inside of the liquidity pool. But ultimately, that didn't happen because of how much UST was being sold. They were just draining all of the USDC and USDT out of the pool, and there was just nothing left but UST basically. And that just happened over a span of several days. And this next chart is going to be breaking down a little bit of basically of the transactions that were occurring. The top 20 addresses contributed to an overwhelming amount of the liquidity drain. The top number 1 wallet contributed to 20% of the UST selling volume. And the second top wallet contributed to 17%. Have these wallets been identified? No, they really haven't. They're just kind of these fresh wallets that were kind of just created and inject with a lot of UST. The wallet one conveniently has been accumulating UST since about April, and it has been accumulating UST for a while.
Where do you get I'm very interested in seeing the dates that they began accumulating UST, these wallets. And I know that you don't have anything ready for that.
Yeah.
But I want to take these top wallets, and I mean, Flipside is still tabulating a lot of data, so there might be like a part 2 to this video where we have some harder data on some of this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd really like to see when these wallets began accumulating, see if there's any lineup among them, and that we can like correlate a coordinated accumulation.
Yeah.
See if we can like tie that to certain real world events that people might suspect, had a role to play in the creation of this like attack plan. That's something I would be really interested in seeing.
Yeah. The thing is that the on-chain data does not speak to who or if this was coordinated. I mean, all that we can really see is that there was a concentrated amount of liquidity moved by a select few wallets, I guess.
Right, but it might if like they all started accumulating around the same time in April.
Yeah, fair.
Right?
Yeah.
Now, of course, there are ways to obfuscate all that, and we might not be able to conclusively demonstrate anything.
Yeah,
but it definitely might.
The top wallet on May 7th did sell specifically exactly the amount of to the tune of 100 million UST, like exactly on the dot, no decimals. It was that exact amount of UST that was sold to the pool. And so it seems interesting that all this liquidity was concentrated to a select few wallets. The vast majority of the market really didn't participate much. I mean, the vast majority of selling came from these top 20 wallets. And that's what we're seeing. I wonder what was going on that kind of insinuated that this was the moment in time to be able to do that, to remove that liquidity, because it was conveniently timed to when UST was removed from the pool from TFL.
Mm-hmm. And then, so just to take it a step further, then beyond just what happened on Curve, but then does that in turn create like an arbitrage opportunity if people are they see UST is now below peg on Curve,
Mm-hmm.
they could even purchase some and then take it over to a centralized exchange and sell it for $1, right? And then that creates the selling pressure and kind of that cascade effect across the centralized exchanges and across wherever else UST is available for a pair, right?
And then ultimately over to Terra, where it starts putting pressure on other peg stabilization mechanisms on chain, including White Whale, which like battled for the peg with its treasury and things like that. And then the pressure just becomes overwhelming, right? Even the Curve pool, like even when there's this massive imbalance on the balance assets of the UST3 pool, and like the Curve pool is 80% UST percentage of the pool, right?
Yeah.
It's still pretty stable, like 99 cents. But then when UST's percentage of the pool goes up to like 90%, it's so imbalanced that 3 Curve is like 10% of the pool, UST is 90%.
Mm-hmm.
The pressure was just too great.
Yeah.
And the price started cascading. And like from there, it went across to, like Evan said, to centralized exchanges and then on chain as well.
Yeah. Unfortunately, the data won't be able to reveal who was behind this, if there was a master orchestrator. It's highly likely that this was a coordinated event, just the fact that so many wallets removed liquidity the same day.
Mm-hmm.
But hopefully Flipside and the great researchers they have over there are going to be able to kind of clue in a little bit what's going on.
So there's a Nansen article that just came out that has a lot of information about wallets involved in the Terra USD DPEG. Now, they say they dispel the myth of a single malicious attacker on Terra. While that's true, it is maybe overstated. It doesn't dispel the myth of a coordinated attack. Okay, the story has never been a single malicious attacker, but a coordinated attack. Okay, and they allow in the conclusion that might have happened. So summary of results. Well, really the biggest summary I want to point out here is these 7 wallets. They list 7 wallets most likely to play a significant role in the DPEG. Here they have the Nansen tags. If you're familiar with Nansen, wallets are given identifiers based on their activity for these 7 wallets. Now for users on smaller screens, I'll go ahead and size up a little bit here. First, they look at Curve, right? That's what most of the charts that we've looked at so far have looked at. They look at Curve and all of these wallets are involved. And all of these wallets are involved in the massive liquidity activity that we've seen so far. Overall, the top 18 wallets have 77% of the activity on May 7th and 8th. Then they look at anchor outflows, with large anchor outflows being maybe a foreshadow. And they find that these large anchor outflows over to withdrawal from anchor are wallets that are associated with the curve wallets. Okay, which is, I mean, yeah, maybe this isn't a single attacker, but this is even more evidence. So are wallets associated pulling a lot of anchor out? You could see the outflows here, the total outflow sum between May 7th and May 10th being in the hundreds of millions of dollars or the tens of millions of dollars for several of these wallets. So they linked down through the bridging UST from Terra to Ethereum trail using Wormhole, which added a lot of information. There's a lot of outflows here, a lot of transfer over to Ethereum, and they identify the top 10 wallets, but they don't go just that far. They go farther than that. They actually link up wallets, and they link them to Terra sister addresses. I'll show you these first two. This 8D4 wallet here, created and then deployed on May 7th. So the Ethereum side was created on basically on the day of the attack, right? With this $85 million activity on Curve. But that came from Terra, and it came from an anchor outflow. It came here. This is Terra Finder, the associated Terra address, the $85 million, which was pulled out of anchor prior to that. Okay, pulled out of anchor. This is May 7th at 5:48, but there was a lot of anchor activity before then, some of it a little bit mysterious. You see this wallet back in April putting a lot of money into anchor, getting those yields, and then pulling it out up here in a series of transactions. But it's strange because there's kind of a swap back and forth here for identical numbers. I don't know the reason for this, but on 204, what this is number out and number in. So pulling out of anchor for 118 million and then putting back into anchor basically the same amount put back into anchor, and then a couple of hours later pulling some out of anchor, so this and then pulling more out of anchor later. So a lot of activity that's interesting. Don't know what it all means. I'd be interested in seeing if this Terra account is linked with any of the other Terra accounts. That analysis hasn't been done. I want to get on that analysis as soon as possible, trying to link up, see if there's any interaction that we can deduce between these Terra accounts, because after all, they do all have associated Terra accounts. This one started back on March 15th. The second largest wallet noted here, the Celsius partner, not Celsius the entity necessarily, right? We're not saying that, but just a wallet that significantly interacts with Celsius. This one started on the Terra side on April 20th. And so on May 7th, May 8th, it starts moving some large activity. And then, you can see these huge withdrawals out through Wormhole in order to participate in the Curve situation, the Curve attack. So you can dive yourself into all these wallets here, but the conclusion is that there are 7 huge wallets. There are their Nansen labels here. Their Ethereum and Terra addresses. The Ethereum side been pretty well researched in this article. The Terra side hasn't yet, but we could do some chain analytics on this Terra stuff. And they all participated in the large Curve UST swap. They all were top anchor withdrawers, and they all had large Wormhole withdrawals to Ethereum on the morning of May 8th, pegging them as 7 top wallets that were involved. This doesn't prove any coordination, but it is a lot of money in a very short amount of time. It might suggest coordination. It definitely doesn't prove that there was a single attacker, right? In fact, the article states that it dispels the myth of a single attacker, but this could be a coordinated attack among entities. And that is the conclusion, in fact, here. There was a small number of wallets and a likely even smaller number of entities behind these wallets, with 7 initiating wallets. A small number of players identified and arbitraged vulnerabilities, specifically in relation to the shallow liquidity of the Curve pools at that time, securing the UST's peg to other stablecoins, leading to withdrawing of UST from Anchor, bridging funds from Terra to Ethereum, and then swapping significant amounts of UST in Curve's liquidity pools so that you destabilize the peg. And during the depegging, of course, the wallets likely exploited inefficiencies between the various Oracle sources, and maybe they shorted assets elsewhere or did things on centralized exchanges that we don't know about. So that information coming over from Nansen, you can check the link out in the show notes.
There might have been a coordinated attack, but then it triggered fears, and you suddenly have people with large amounts like exiting the market then, even though they had nothing to do with it on subsequent days.
Yeah, I mean, that's just 100% likely. It could have been a select few with high liquidity that realized that there was a market opportunity to kind of be able to profit off of this, to create shorts, to create other kind of positions that would benefit from a deviation in the price system.
Or well, they're selling UST.
Yeah.
Or their UST is going down in value and they're trying to preserve capital. It's not necessarily just create shorts, right?
Yeah.
They might be like, oh no, I need to get out of this.
Yeah, because this asset is now no longer valued to what I thought was going to be a stable price.
Right. And that definitely happened. I mean, especially with retail on centralized exchanges and so on. And nonprofits that held anchor assets and organizations that held assets on Monday, Tuesday, they were really looking at like at what point do we want to pull everything out at a loss? You know, do we want to wait for bounces? Do we want to? And every group was kind of in that mode of whether and when to preserve capital. Some of them have held through till now.
Yeah.
And there might be some kind of compensation for them, which we'll talk about later with the Terra V2 plan. But anyway, I don't want to take us off the rails too much here, but it's not necessarily true that all of these cells you're seeing on these pie charts, especially in later days, are like coordinated attacks, right? They could be just making capital preservation moves.
Yeah, I do agree. I do think that this could have been just kind of like a wealth preservation situation for the majority of UST holders. I think that there was just a major amounts of coincidences that were revealed through the data analysis. Of the 500 million UST that was sold on May 7th, 205 million of that was sold within the same hour. And either those were some very on the dot, very punctual people who were on the pulse of the market and knew that on a Sunday, like just knew that like, oh my God, the peg's deviating. I got to remove my 205 million UST. It just seems to be very, very interestingly happening at the same time.
But I mean, unless they had like bots set up to trigger that, right?
Yeah.
They wouldn't have noticed on their CoinGecko or CoinMarketCap or Binance report that it was heading straight down because that was a curve number.
Yeah.
Wow. There were additional things like several, but like one that comes to mind right now is that there was some kind of gas attack, DDoS attack on Tendermint, you know? So an exploit apparently was known that allowed whoever it was to make a gas attack that really congested things. Like all the validators stayed up, but they took uptime hits because they were having trouble handling everything. And all of them went down to like 99.8, 99.7% uptime.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you were trying to do things on the chain on those days. You know, even before things got really bad with the peg, you try to push something through on Anchor and you'd get sequence errors or other errors, or it just would spin forever and then say failed, right? And like, as far as we can tell, that was like some kind of gas attack exploits, and it could have just been the masses like trying to, you know, but Terra had just managed like 9,000-10,000 transactions a second, you know, or in a block during some of that. So I personally don't think that it was just people rushing to get out of their anchor. That obviously contributed to it.
Yeah.
But it's the same kind of thing where like there's some kind of attacker or party that is swarming the network, and then there's all the people trying to interact with it. And so it kind of snowballs into something major. Same thing with where there's a party that sells a lot of UST into the Curve pool, so imbalances it, and also maybe does some other activities on centralized exchanges that we can't know because we don't have access to their data. And like that triggers some fears from people who are like, oh, UST is 98 cents, let's exit this position. Oh, UST 95 cents, let's exit this position. Oh, it's 80 cents, let's exit this position. You know, so they were able to potentially, I don't have proof of this, but galvanize the market, galvanize all the people in the market to take actions in self-preservation and self-interest. You know, some held to the bitter bottom and are still holding, but galvanize the market to amplify their own efforts and their own capital that was put into this.
Yeah.
So officially, I say officially because some of this is a little hard to track, right? We have transactions to exchanges, and then we can't get private exchange data, right? hasn't been shared. It's if you can get it at all. I mean, I don't think they would do that, right?
Yeah.
Officially, the Luna Foundation Guard did deploy this Bitcoin here mentioned to I think it was a Binance account, and maybe they deployed some of this other stuff too. I'm not sure, but it executed on-chain swaps and transferred BTC to a counterparty in order to enable them to enter trades with the foundation in large size and on short notice. So there's a list here. You can see the what the Luna Foundation Guard's kind of timeline breakdown is. This is a week after these events. Directly sold 26 million Tether USDT and 23 million USDC into UST, and that's kind of a stabilizing attempt, right?
Yeah.
You're playing against the huge liquidity of these other stable coins and trying to buy UST. And then transferred 52,000, about 63% or something like that of the BTC to trade with a counterparty, net of an excess 5,000 that they've returned, allegedly, rumoredly, because they realized what was happening with a potential Bitcoin short, and exploitation of market forces pressing down and everything, and like, hey, we can continue making money because they're going to continue selling Bitcoin. And then they realized and sent back. All right, that's rumoredly what happened for an aggregate 1.5 billion UST, but still. UST continued on May 10th. It fell to 75 cents. On May 10th, it was going to hit 33 cents, bounce again, go back down to 33 cents, and then go up to 82 cents. I remember these numbers well because at all these points, there were parties trying to decide what to do, right? And then Terraform Labs, it says, on behalf of the foundation, this has been the point of some speculation, but here's the tweet that was out before all the speculation, executed the following exchange trades in a last-ditch effort. Sold 33,000 BTC for an aggregate 1.1 million UST, swapped to Luna and staked across a range of validators. This is yet another potential leg to the attack, is now you've got all these people who have been dumping UST, whether for good purposes or bad purposes, whatever, and they end up with a bunch of Luna. So potentially they can spin up their own validators and just take over the Luna network now, right? And so there were actions done. In fact, the validators all got together, all might be generous. A large number of validators got together and executed a vote to patch themselves in order to stop the creating of validators, afraid that people with this huge amount of Luna would now create a super validator and take over the entire network. So all these transactions were completed according to LFG account, and the remaining reserves are as listed here. I don't know if this is still current, okay, but there's definitely been outreach by prominent entities in the community like TFL, Terraform Labs, and Luna Foundation Guard, and other entities you'd recognize, are making an effort, have been making an effort to reach out to protocols, figure out what they're doing, whether they need runway, and so on. So then we kind of transitioned into this, we call it the dust settle phase, right? The DPEG has happened. Everyone knows that it's not coming back, at least not soon. And people started talking about what to do, both with the protocol and the projects and personally, and so on.
I would say, this DPEG happened Monday, and then Tuesday we thought maybe it was going to come back, and then it didn't. Monday and Tuesday were almost like a repeat of just like nightmares. And then by Wednesday, we or I had pretty much like capitulated, and at that point was like, all right. I actually sent out a tweet and I said, there's two things I think that Luna and the Luna community had that can be salvaged. But at that point, there really wasn't much communication from TFL or from really leadership. And I said, there's the UX on like using Terra Station and all of the dApps and stuff like that, I still think is phenomenal, even compared to like some of the like L2 rollups over on Ethereum. And like a prime example of that is trying to use AVAX. Whenever I was trying to use AVAX on Anchor, and it was just like a total nightmare compared to like native Terra. So I figured the UX and how the dApps interact with each other, I thought could be salvaged. And then on top of that, like a lot of really great builders, a lot of good teams. My heart goes out to all the teams that built and launched, and my heart goes out to all the teams that were working behind the scenes. Some of which we had interviewed, and they had a sort of a launch roadmap in the works, and they were basically at the 1 inch yard line. Like Sigma, Nebula, teams that put up their heart and effort into things, and to watch it kind of fizzle away as they're just getting ready to launch really is awful.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you about the UX. Like Jimmy Lee, our friend over at Prism and Goblin Town and like all sorts of GT Capital and all sorts of places, says I miss clicking my ledger. You know, even when I go back in to do something with like some UST we have stuck there that's worth like 6 cents on the dollar now. It's like, man, this UX is so much nicer than MetaMask or anything like that.
Yeah. And I will say, you know, once I had put out that tweet, I think maybe a lot of people at that point were kind of on the fence about like actually capitulating. And they wanted to, you know, nobody wants to be like the first domino to fall, and admitting that, hey, if we need to salvage what's good and what's great from the Luna community, also kind of implies like, hey, that model that we just tried is broken. And I think people didn't necessarily want to be the first domino to fall on that front. But I will say, you know, a lot of builders reached out, a lot of people in the community reached out, and, you know, a lot of them were just wanted to talk about, you know, hey, like we're shocked. What are you going to do? Blah, blah, blah. Nobody knows. But I do think that people in the community, builders that, you know, we saw the Terra Builders Alliance come together. I do think people at that point started to switch their focus over to how do we salvage these things. And it was really a community effort. And it was, I mean, it was like a bomb went off and there was, you know, the dust settling. I mean, the dust is still settling, but it was ground zero chaos, people pulling in all different directions. And then to add to that, you know, those people have put their time and their lives and dedicated their entire identity to this network. But on top of that, then we had this weird layer of like people now buying Luna at a very low price and coming in and like asking for a burn. And it seemed like very inorganic to me in certain ways. I was on a Twitter space where, you know, the title of the Twitter space was, you know, True Luna Maxis. We're going to burn Luna. And I joined and there was like 105 people in there, none of which I recognized ever. I've never seen any of them on Twitter. I've never interacted with any of them. None of them followed me. I didn't follow any of them. And, you know, they were on the chat, and the one guy, you know, I just started kind of giving like my postmortem and what I thought had happened. And the one guy gets on and he asked me, well, can't we just go into the GitHub and fix the bug that caused UST to depeg? And I was like, what, like who gave you that talking point? Like what, like, why are you here? And it was just, I don't know. It's very weird. And I don't know. I don't want to like say allegedly, it seemed like a funded effort to bring like lowbrow community members in to kind of push this burn Luna narrative, while at the same time you've got protocols scrambling behind the scenes to potentially put out a proposal for Terra V2 that would make everyone happy, which is impossible, right? You're never going to make everyone happy. And then, you know, you got protocols jumping ship to other networks, which is totally understandable. And it was just very strange, like some of the communication. You know, I heard of validators getting emails from people that were like long lists of, you know, checkpoints and things in the media that were totally like cherry picked or misleading. So
and like attached to legal threats from like lawyers that don't exist.
Yeah,
that you can't. The internet does not know of their existence if they do exist.
Yeah.
But like 20-page emails that are very well written. You know, so lots of weird communications. It's the kind of thing that only happens when, I mean, I don't know. It's class A, and I mean, I understand it's terrible, but like first class trolling or funded just confusion effort. A lot of times what internet trolls do is just kind of confuse the issue and try to sow confusion.
Mm-hmm.
And man, but you're right. Let's dive in a little bit with some background here, like some tweets. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. We've got Tundra, who was tweeting through this whole thing saying, I'm torn on FatmanTerra. Have you seen FatmanTerra?
Yes.
Who can miss him?
Famous.
Who has not seen FatmanTerra?
He's everywhere.
Even Tundra, who's been, you know, and I'm not saying, you know, even Tundra says I like some of what he's sharing, and so do I. I'm gonna show it as an example of something positive later, but don't like other parts, right? Like, I mean, a lot of tweets relying on verified sources from this new account named FatmanTerra.
Right.
Like, corroborated verified sources have informed me, and then he acts like the entire community should believe everything that followed up, which isn't how that works. But some of the things, are worth listening to. And then also torn internally on supporting Terra V2 or not. And I think this has been kind of everyone's feeling, right? There's everyone has been discussing, and the current V2 plan is definitely a compromise of sorts between parties. There are people who held UST through the whole thing, or even tried to buy Luna in order to like support the network later, who feel like they should be involved. And there are people who say, no, only former stakers should be involved. But it is very interesting that a lot of the people that, are in favor of, the burn, or like a lot of allocation to late holders after the attack and so on. You're right. I've never seen them before, never heard of them. And not that I've heard of everyone, but like floods of people who are obviously new to this.
Right.
And there's like a W Luna meme. You can like search W Luna hashtag, the wrapped Luna that's on Coinbase, and just see people shilling it to their accounts, people trying to get it to pump. It's gone through crazy price action as people buy it, like just not understanding what's happening. And anyway, so he sums up what a situation, and that is really how we felt. I think you would all agree. This is how we felt for the past couple of weeks. Like, we're going to work. Everyone's trying to work together to figure out a path forward. There's a path forward that we're going to describe in just a minute. But I mean, you see Will Chen, and Will Chen is not Terraform Labs. Did work there formerly, but left a while ago for Terran One and CW Script and things like that. Just posting this. I mean, this is what's been going on at every level, from people we know and respect, and to us sometimes. I mean, when have you not sat down and thought, what if this is all a big conspiracy? The CIA is coming after, and they're going to pound V2 into the ground, or like, and something like that. They're about Do Kwon, about Terraform Labs, about all the validators, about the media, about CoinDesk, about, like, pick your target.
Yeah.
There's people out there who are putting out all kinds of theories, and they'll put together some evidence that is really like correct evidence. You'll look at it, you'll be like, yeah, look at this tweet from Fatman, although he still does this very good authority from a private source thing. That basis cash did come from the people at TFL before. It doesn't mean everyone at TFL, doesn't mean the modern incarnation, but Do Kwon wasn't exactly the ringleader. He just pitched a lot of the ideas. So he's trying to basically take down some of what the CoinDesk article said when it hit Do Kwon and said he founded Basis Cash and exit scammed and then did UST, right? That was basically alleged in the article. And so there's people talking about things, and they'll put out information that they know you like, and then they'll add a bunch of other information you can't corroborate and put it into a story. And since you agreed on a few of those points, you'll find yourself wanting to agree on the whole, like this.
Yeah.
I'm sure every single one of those papers is compelling, but that doesn't mean that the red strings are right,
Yeah.
So there's been this kind of conspiracy activity going nuts. And we've got people who seem to be good actors completely disagreeing on what the path forward is through this process, and eventually coming to a kind of compromise. Wasi Lawyer was very involved. He says he absolutely feels for every person and sincerely hopes that TFL and StableCoin have it in mind to help make people whole. But what emerged wasn't a Terraform Labs initiated plan, but Terra V2. If you want to read more about Fatman, Will Chen, and the interactions, there's a thread here where Will goes through basically a lot of the allegations that Fatman has made and gives his input. And sometimes it's something like, well, yeah, of course you're sort of right, but that's, of course, we should have expected that. And sometimes it's just like, there's no way this is true. A lot of interaction happening on Twitter right now to follow. And meanwhile, to add to the confusion, the burn crowd comes in, as if like sending all your Luna to a burn address will magically make you rich.
Yeah.
Which I don't know what your guys' take on that. Have you followed that?
There are accounts that are literally spamming this, like as an initiative. There's like a coalescing of this, and I don't know if you guys have been on Twitter a lot. You guys can tell that there are Twitter Spaces where they just have UST Luna breaking news, UST Luna recovery ? And then the people who are hosting it are people that I have never seen in the community at all entirely. And the conversations in there are actually getting ridiculous at some points. At one point, they pulled up the famous clip that I'm sure we'll cover later of Pantera over here, who is getting accused of asking Do Kwon about the classic Terraform Labs plan to go to zero. Obviously, that was taken out of context, but It's just the fact that people are kind of like building on top of this stuff. They're seeing all these things that happen in the past, and they're finding ways to kind of be able to shift a narrative to drive some sort of messaging. I don't honestly know what the point of sending assets to the burn address is. I genuinely don't see how that is doing anything for anyone other than just throwing away their money.
I think it's just total chaos and confusion. And from my perspective, again, I don't know everything, and there's so much chaos, it's hard to even really see clearly what the hell's going on. But the burn narrative started as, I think it was like a CZ tweet talking about burning the Luna, I don't know, to somehow stop it from hyperinflating, and that was somehow going to like bail out UST, and they wanted that to be like a core decision like made at like from basically everybody like in the core community. And then somehow it got sidetracked into like random degens sending their own Luna into a burn wallet so that, I don't know, they can make the circulating supply go lower. But even if that first narrative of burning Luna, I don't even understand it. Like you burn all the Luna, that just prints more UST. And with like the way the seniorage machine.
No, it's not a seniorage burn. It's like literally just send to a burn address. Like,
but even if you did
out
that,
of circulation.
So even if you did that, and let's just say somehow that magically solves everybody's problem and UST repegs, you're still in the same boat you were in May 6th. You still have this attack point and these vectors that people can come in and basically wreck the whole network.
Also, now you have no Luna.
And
which
yeah,
maybe
so
is the point.
So why would anybody want that? That's not even good. Like you need to, that's why like I sent out the tweet that I did, and I was like, I had already capitulated because I was like, we just got killed, whether it was a coordinated attack or just market, greater market forces or whatever. There's clearly a weakness in an attack vector here. So these people who are on board like Luna Classic or whatever, who are like, oh, we're gonna like it's gonna repeg. Let's just buy UST and just wait for it to repeg. If it repegs, it's gonna come. It's gonna be subject to the exact same attack vectors that were, the reason that version 1 didn't work out.
Potentially, yeah. I mean, that's clearly what even Doe thinks. He said, I quoted earlier. He said, "Well, I think that there still needs to be a decentralized money, but it's not UST, at least in its existing form, right?"
Right.
And I mean, we could talk about this all day, and I'm sure by the time the video is out, there will be some evolution to all these discussions and narratives that have caught people's attention all over the place. But let's talk a little bit really quickly about some of the capital groups we know and major investors and what happened with them and their responses. We'll share the screen again here. Delphi Digital, I'm not going to say backers of any project, they're not, but they're major contributors and ideators to the tokenomics of things like Mars and Astroport and some other things. And overall, just a great research product. And I mean, I don't know, I'm a big fan of a lot of things Delphi has done, but they talk about, they say, look, we're heartbroken. That's something we believed in ended up having the opposite effect from Delphi. And they have this this post that talks about how that they had 0.5% of NAV in Q1 2021. I think it's something like $10 million worth. And of course, it was worth a lot more later in the year, ended up being 13% of NAV, net asset value, across Delphi Ventures. On a deal count basis, less than 5% of their total number of deals were in companies or protocols related to Terra. So the original 10% investment, I guess that's a different investment here. But so Delphi did not sell any Luna during this event, but isn't destroyed, isn't wrecked in terms of at least like a cost basis perspective, right? Where they spent this much and then this much across the whole thing. Now, of course, they had some major projects and so on, but and you might, as if you remember the Luna community, you might heavily associate Delphi with Luna, but like they released 30 posts in April alone, not including their newsletter, reports, and so on. But since the past year or more, since February 21, there have only been 6 total reports focused on Terra. So it definitely wasn't like their entire business. We've definitely associated people at Delphi with Terra and Delphi in general with Terra, but they, while they regret this and, they say they're not going to delete or edit any of their Terra reports, they're going to make them publicly available so anyone can go back to read our analyses and make their own judgments. Here they are right here. with a list of links about that include valuing layer ones and a couple of 2021 reports based on a bunch of things. So Delphi losing that amount of money. Hashed apparently lost 3.5 billion. That is not net, right? This was the value of money put in. This is definitely not the value of money put in, right? Like this is the value. Hashed was one of those groups that really didn't sell Luna. Like there were a lot of early investors that sold Luna at certain points. It made sense. I mean, even at like 30 cents, 35 cents, 40 cents a dollar, whatever, because they had backed it a long time ago. It had gone for a couple of years. They were balancing out, and Hashed didn't. They were one of those groups that held on and held faith and really supported the ecosystem. Of course, this is definitely also not Hashed's like only
Iron
only
in the
holding,
fire.
only iron in the fire. Yeah, only holding, and they're figuring out ways forward too. But still, there's nobody in the world that's not going to look at this and say this is a significant loss, right? I mean, $3.5 billion in what the Luna value was. I think this is at the top, not at the 2 weeks ago. But that's a significant. And also Binance tweeted out that they had something like $1 billion of Luna from an early involvement. So these parties might be interested in what's happening on V2, but I don't think that they actually end up getting any amount of the Terra V2 drop. So let's transition into Luna V2 and talk a little bit about the Terra governance prop here. This is a tweet from Doe for recognizability, but Doe is the author on Agora, on Terra Agora, right? But there has been a lot of input, especially in Discords for Luna and things like that, and amendments made directly to the proposal that came from community discussion and so on, and other input into that proposal. It went to vote to rename the existing network and to have a new, not a fork, but a new, I guess not a fork is kind of it's tricky semantics there, but have a new Terra blockchain in Luna. And
well, can you explain that? Can you explain the difference there for a second? Because I think that is a detail that they've kind of emphasized, and
right.
I think a lot of people get confused between like what is the difference between if they just fork it or create a new Terra blockchain from Genesis. What does that mean?
So fork is they're taking the state of like things at a certain point, and then the blockchain continues from there. So like, let's say we take May 5th or May 23rd or whatever, and we take a certain block and the blockchain continues from there. So the Luna and UST and all the assets you had at that point would be yours in the new chain, right? Now, the argument is there's not really a fair point to do that at. And to have all wounded parties, the mass majority of wounded parties be like compensated for the good activity they tried to do, right? So instead, it's a new blockchain with a Genesis airdrop structure. Also, the fork would it would be weird with exchanges if you held on Binance or something. Maybe the fork wouldn't be honored. If it was, how would Binance know what to credit you with? It would be kind of a mess, because maybe you had Luna today on the 24th, but the fork was on this is on the 24th, the 25th. Luna today on the 25th, but the fork was on the 3rd, and how would the exchanges deal with that? This proposal, which has passed with there were some significant validators that did not vote. Orion voted abstain, and they pushed a tweet as to why. They said, look, we've got very split opinions about this. There were strong supporters of Terra 2 who said they understand it's impossible to make everyone happy and the proposal will never be perfect, but we're in agreement, right, on this united proposal and so on. And so the vote did end up passing with 13% no's with vetoes, a large percentage of abstains, based on probably a lot of community feedback, but mostly yes votes. And it does this, again, there's been amendments to the proposal and so on. And I want to find what the final distribution is. I think this might be the final, but the amendment might be it. So hang on. Pre-attack lunars, post-attack 20 to 15%. Post-attack. Yeah, okay, this is updated. All right, so the distribution is a community pool, 30% controlled by stake governance, and a lot of it earmarked for developers. Why? We've got some of the most talented development teams ever on Terra who built all these great UXs you were talking about, first-in-class UX, first-in-class primitives, first-in-class DeFi apps on the Terra blockchain, right? And these development teams want to be funded. So a huge portion going to community pool and a huge portion to developers. This is 10% of whole, not 10% of pool. I wish that I had a little bit more clarity on that.
Yeah, and I just want to chime in here really quick. If you could go back to the actual governance vote, this governance proposal here is people that actually have skin in the game, that actually own Luna, that delegate to validators. Some of the validators will vote on behalf of you. However, if you don't agree with your validator vote, you can change your individual vote.
Right.
But there were a lot of and this goes back to the weird people that are joining the community kind of out of nowhere. There were polls put on Twitter and polls put up in the Agora post, and all these weird governance proposals coming out of nowhere. And it would show an overwhelming amount of people that were in support of not creating a regenesis and not in support of V2. But a lot of these people, I mean, you have no skin in the game to go vote on an Agora post, right? This vote is the people that actually have Luna staked to validators, which is how this has always worked. It's how every governance decision has worked since Luna's been around, as far as I know. And so you're not going to get things done by just posting a Twitter thread and act like you've reached consensus with a bunch of bots and people that have been in the community for 3 seconds. So, whenever I think Terra posted their tweet today, and they did say there was an overwhelming support or something for Terra V2. That might be stretching it a little bit, but some people that are in the comments or in the replies are like, overwhelming. Check out this poll where 99.9% of a click farm in China voted for no. And it's well, that's bullshit. Nobody cares about that. This is where the governance actually takes place.
Right.
So just keep that in mind for anybody that's watching this channel for the first time and is well, wait a minute, the community doesn't support this. This is just Do Kwon marching forward and trying to basically exit scam everyone again. It's well, this is how governance has actually always worked, and you can check the people that have skin in the game and the validators what they voted for. And from our perspective, from Terra Bites, we want to vote for the whatever can help salvage the builders of the community. And if this new sort of community driven version 2, if that's going to work out and give them hopefully some resources. They've already got their code built for this. They don't need to, imagine as a team, you get your war chest decimated and now you need to go and migrate. That's basically impossible, right? So at least this can help alleviate some of that. And I think the reason that we supported this is because we want those builders to continue building great things. And if this version 2 is going to have a future at all, they're going to have to be the ones that lead it. So
I want to point out that the TFL wallet, and I think some other wallets, I'm not sure, but the TFL wallet is removed in the whitelist from the airdrop. So making Terra a fully community-owned chain. Of course, people have come out on Twitter and been like, "See, this is their exit." They're absolving themselves of liability in the new network. Well, you can't have it both ways, right? If you really want to airdrop TFL a huge amount of the new network, then you want that. But if you don't want that, then you want this. You want TFL to not be a part or not a significant part of the new chain, right? And so pre-attack Luna holders, 35%. So the overwhelming majority goes to pre-attack Luna holders. And look, this is even more than it indicates, because not only pre-attack Luna holders, but also Luna holders of derivatives. I can't see where it's somewhere here. I'll try to find it later, but there's something about C Luna, P Luna, and other Luna derivatives being included here. Stader Luna, Luna X, for example, and other Luna derivatives also being included here. So yeah, there it is. Staking derivatives included, all bonded, so B Luna 2, and unbonded Luna, minus TFL at what is the pre-attack snapshot. Pre-attack snapshot is happening May 7th, means it's retroactive, but happens May 7th at 2300 hours plus 8 o'clock. So that's oh man, that's the morning here in the United States. So this is probably Singapore time or something like that. And wallets with a certain amount have early unlock. So if you have less than 10K Luna, including staking derivatives and bonded Luna, then 30% is unlocked at Genesis for you. And then you've got 70% vested over 2 years. Meanwhile, wallets with larger amounts of Luna have a cliff, so they don't get an unlocked amount. And huge wallets, they have a cliff with a longer vesting period. Okay. AUST holders before the attack also get 10% for people that had UST and Anchor. This shows a little bit less commitment to the chain, but still commitment to believing in AUST. And this is a lot of people who had savings, right? We've heard some sad stories of depressed people who had savings in Anchor Protocol, and maybe they were able to pull out at a certain amount, and maybe they pulled out at, 60 cents or something like that. Well, they still, even if they pulled out and saved a lot of capital, they'll still get in the snapshot. But especially if you've held all the way down, this is good news for you, because there's going to be some kind of recompense besides just repeg hopes on the Luna Classic chain, which might happen at some point. Who knows?
Yeah.
There's 10% going to Anchor UST holders. But then also there's some love for post-attack holders. And this is people who maybe believed in the chain and held, or maybe accumulated Luna thinking it would bounce back, right? Or held a lot of UST through the attack. So let's say you're a person who held Luna and you never sold it. You held it through the attack. You still have it. There's still a little bit for you here, especially if you like bought Luna, right, at crazy low prices, thinking it would rebound. And so even those people who are into the burn crowd, they're still going to get like a piece of this thing,
Right.
with a 30% unlocked at Genesis.
And two notes here: the burn and Terra V2 aren't like binary. It's not one or the other. But V2 does kind of mean that a lot of the network infrastructure and stuff is going to move off of Luna Classic. But if you're really into burn and you want to go spin up validators on Luna Classic and start your own governance over there, I mean, you can still do that. So all these people who are so excited about the burn and are putting all their effort into, posting tweets and writing 7-page emails and doing all this shit for burn, put that effort into the burn, and your wish is the universe's command. So let me just say that once. Two, I think a lot of people are upset that people are getting like the DPEG, post DPEG, like that there's so much going to them. But I think a good example of someone that was kind of caught up in this and like an example of a user, and I fall into this category. And I personally, I don't even care if I get any airdrop. I'm not worried about that. I'm not expecting this to make me whole. I don't think anybody should expect this to make them whole anytime soon. But an example, and I think a lot of people did this, is as Luna price was crashing, you've got an anchor loan. Now all of a sudden it's like, okay, what am I going to do? You start to purchase more Luna, convert it to B Luna to try and help your anchor loan out, or you're purchasing UST to pay it back. I think there's a lot of people that were scrambling on their anchor loans that are going to get left out if you don't kind of take care of them with this segment here.
They might have like sold Ethereum and bridged it over or something. If they, right.
Yeah.
Sold it. Well, there's your list of wallets to look for. Right. But they might have sold Ethereum and bridged it over, of course. And they nuked some of their other holdings in this crunch to come over and save their anchor loan. So
right.
that's a good example.
I think there's a huge contingent of people that fall in that are, they're true blue lunatics or whatever, however you want to say it.
Yeah.
I can see why for them, this is included in it.
That said, this was amended down. You can see the amendment up here. The UST holders distribution was initially 20%. I don't know what version that was in, but prior to this amendment, it was 20%. It's been dropped down to 15% and then 5% going to the community pool. And then also they're increasing the amount that lower holders have. Those like lesser holders who get an amount of liquidity immediately has been increased from 15 to 30%. And that was kind of included with this 30% unlocked at Genesis for people who have 10K Luna or less. So the proposal really does, I mean, again, the other side will be like, well, obviously you're trying to get all these people off your back by rewarding them. But like, I mean, come on, like you can't, like, how do you throw that at a proposal that's trying to reward the little people, right?
Yeah.
Like, if you're going to write a proposal that's trying to reward the little people and you're under as much hostility as Doe is right now, or the community is right now, or the Terra brand is right now, Terraform Labs, the Terra Builders Alliance, everyone that was kind of involved and had feedback in here, you're going to create a proposal that gives a bunch of tokens to little people. And then someone's going to go and say, well, you're just trying to make the little people stop coming after you. I mean, come on.
I mean, that was the point. We're trying to make whole for the average
Right,
investor. And
right.
I think the initial proposal, when we first saw the original one, it really wasn't kind of like targeting that. It was, I think that the first rendition of the proposal was strictly just keeping in mind of providing emergency relief to builders and to teams that were devastated by this. But yeah, and I think that this new proposal, by allowing these smaller wallets by the people who were actually just holding and investing and passively trying to engage with the network, people who were promised and kind of engaged with the idea of having a stable coin and something that was going to be of stable value, for it to fall this way and for it to fall that badly, and also with the kind of the misleading and engaging tweets that Doe actually sent out while the crisis was happening, saying hold tight, hold steady, I've got reinforcements on the way, or something along those lines. If you're an average retail investor, if you're a holder, even me, myself, when I saw those tweets, I was convicted. I was like, okay, they've done this before. They've handled this economic crisis before. They've handled this situation before, back in May 2021. I'm going to trust in the team, and I'm going to trust in their ability to adjust the situation. And I'm glad that this proposal is now doing this and targeting the smaller wallets, because we were all unexpectedly holding something down to zero. At least I was. And a lot of people experience that pain and hurt right now. And I can only imagine what a lot of people are feeling right now as far as just watching this unfold the way it did.
Yeah, there was a lunatic safe spaces going on during maybe the worst of it. I really don't know. I think it was Tuesday when we came back up to 92 cents and businesses were like, oh, we're rebounded. I mean, 92 cents isn't so bad, especially after the 66 from the day before, right? Like, oh, hey, okay, so Luna came down to $14. We're stabilized now, we're going to stabilize. But then when it started heading back down again, there were safe spaces for lunatics, Twitters, just an amazingly caring community. There will be people with outbursts for sure. And the care has been kind of disrupted by a lot of the conspiracy back and forth. And I'm not trying to disparage anyone by saying conspiracy. I mean, like, people with conspiracy theories sometimes are right about them, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes are wrong about them. And I don't necessarily know all the details of what you think and the evidence you have for it. But that kind of cut into the community. But for a long time there, it was extremely caring. And I think still is one of the most caring communities I've ever seen in crypto. Let's hit up a little bit more about Terra 2 and then talk about where protocols are going and what's happening to protocols and what people should watch out for if they're looking for airdrops and snapshots and so on. So the Terra account tweeting Terra 2 is coming. The Terra ecosystem has voted to pass, calling for the genesis of a new blockchain and the preservation of our community. So this is a lot of community entities with a lot of like developer teams and plans and products and UX designs and all sorts of things. The revival plan is what we just were showing. Create a new Terra chain without the ALGO stablecoin. Okay, because there are still Terra things like NFTs and like Levana, although they might not be staying, but like cool projects that are on Terra, right? The final release of the new Terra core here, and Luna airdrop plans kind of summarized for you. And here we go. Terraform Labs wallet will be excluded, but this is what I really wanted to point out in this thread. We are proud to be working closely with SEX partners, centralized exchange partners, such as Binance, Bybit, and many others. Yeah, like I feel like bad about laughing at any time during this video. It is a postmortem for people, myself included, ourselves included, who lost a lot of money.
Yeah.
Okay. We didn't think that you would be here with us about a week ago, right? You didn't think you would be here either. And we've hopefully figured out a path forward. But we're like, humor is one of the tools to get through stuff like this, right? Anyway, SEX partners. Terraform Labs, SEX partners confirmed. Go ham with the quote that video and throw Doe's face in there with hot sauce. I don't know. Do what you want. SEX partners such as Binance, Bybit, and many others includes Huobi, which has tweeted, "Hey, Huobi supports the launch of Luna 2 on May 27th." Binance also supporting this as well, aiming to provide impacted users on Binance with the best possible treatment. I can only imagine that includes Luna V2 airdrop and distribution of some kind, right?
Yeah.
The exchanges have been confirmed to be included. Don't know what's going to happen on Coinbase. I don't know if Wrapped Luna was included or not, but Coinbase has announced that they will suspend trading on, this was announced a long time ago before this proposal and things, and people are like, oh, suspicious. Maybe it's just a coincidence that it's also May 27th. Suspend trading in UST and Luna on Friday, May 27th. So not suspend withdrawals and deposits and things like that, but suspend trading. But otherwise, centralized exchanges supporting, and you can go and check out if you're a validator or a dApp developer or something looking to participate in the new chain. You can check that out right here on the Huobi Twitter. And we've seen a bunch of protocols. I want to get into protocol plans for what they're going to do. I'm going to hopefully let somebody else drive here because I've been driving for a long time, but I do have the tweets. I'll drive that. But first, there's a Phoenix Finance. Does anyone know about this? Like, apparently a DEX is going to launch Phoenix Finance. What is this about?
Well, for me, it seems like it's going to be the entrance of a new kind of decentralized exchange for the network. Without the presence of UST, a lot of the products that Delphi was building in the ecosystem, specifically Mars and Astroport, depended on that stablecoin. And that was part of their original thesis for even investing and getting into the space, was the realization of decentralized money. And so now with the kind of the losses that Delphi has taken, and also the reallocation of their team's efforts and kind of just risk assessing for the future of their own team, it seems like that the vision and the future of Astroport and Mars are not going to be growing further than what they currently are. They will be launching on Terra V2. However, they won't be advancing beyond that, if I'm not mistaken. And so that has kind of created a new void for a decentralized exchange, a new principal DEX to kind of come into the Terra ecosystem to really start kind of taking over what Astroport was doing. And I know that they're going to be introducing new stable coins into Terra V2, and I believe they're hoping to introduce them immediately with USDC and USDT.
I know that a lot of the ecosystem was, I'm not financial advice, none of this video is, but was talking about Frax positively, and maybe Frax will be one of those that comes in, so provides an alternative for USDT, USDC, potentially DAI, whatever comes to Terra V2. So Prism, we were big fans of what Prism was doing. And there will still be a Luna role on the new chain, right? It's just no UST. So Prism refraction and Prism derivatives and so on. The Prism vault contains about 6 million Luna, and it is confirmed that C Luna and P Luna holders at the snapshot will qualify for both the pre-attack and post-attack snapshots that we mentioned. Okay, so any P Luna or C Luna that is in liquidity pools that was being unbonded, and that was provided as collateral on Edge protocol. And both of them will be considered equivalent to 1 Luna for the purposes of any snapshot. So remember those C Luna, P Luna wars? It turns out that the real winner was people who just held both. Both will be considered equivalent to 1 Luna.
Wait a minute. Wait, both C Luna and P Luna? But what about Y Luna?
Sorry, you're right. Y Luna has not been included in the snapshot. Because it's only an entitlement to the yield of Luna and not the underlying ownership of Luna.
So P Luna, after all that trash talk, P Luna ends up winning at the end of the day.
P Luna wins the Godzilla Mothra fight that you had up on that thumbnail. Yeah. So that's Prism right now. Of course, all of this is stuff that there might be breaking news. This just came out minutes ago, while we were preparing to start this show. Levana protocol, quoting Ecclesiastes. Levana is an NFT project. It's really not. It's got a huge NFT presence that's really cool with nested dragon eggs and everything, but it's also leverage any asset, and that's not dependent on UST at all either. So it was a project to check out what they were doing. They have a flight map here where they're going to research, compare different chains, discuss, migrate to whatever their new environment is, relaunch, and then get back to the main roadmap. So while they haven't they haven't decided yet, they do have an NFT warping status update on May 26th at 5 UTC or noon. Not sure this video will be out by then, but if it is, you can go there. Apollo DAO.
Yeah, I know Apollo DAO. We're friendly with a lot of the guys over there. They've had a lot of internal discussions on what's next for them. They seem to be basically deploying across the entire Cosmos ecosystem and that's going to include Terra V2 as well. But of course, subject to change depending on what goes on. But they're going to be exploring the Cosmos, which I suspect a lot of these projects are going to be doing.
Yeah, I mean, even if they're like Loop, we were showing they intend to support Terra V2, but also other Cosmos chains, which makes a lot of sense. Technical compatibility, especially if Terra V2 has full IBC. So Angel Protocol, we don't know much. We've seen they've committed to Halo token redistribution on wherever they end up, and that includes staked, unstaked, owed to you for some reward, LP'd, vesting on Star Terra or Apollo DAO, and so on. A lot of projects making the same commitments. They just don't know where they're going yet, whether they need to redeploy to another Cosmos chain, whether they need to migrate to EVM and deploy on an Ethereum chain, Ethereum virtual machine chain, something like that. So I don't know where Angel's going yet, but Halo investors, your tokens are being tracked. So Astroport came out with a whole article, which I'll size up here, and they have a little bit of backstory with the voting on the new network and the plans that it includes, and the popular protocols that plan to support the network, some of which we've mentioned. And the Astroport smart contract system will be redeployed on the new network. Meaning that you can use it on Terra 2.0 and Terra Classic. If you're still on Luna and you've been doing something like trying to pay down UST debt in order to rescue your BETH from an anchor deposit, right, which is still very doable, then you can still do that. However, they don't have any concrete plans for like continuing deployment, as you said, right? They're exploring additional options and so on, including like an ultimate destination on a DeFi focused app chain. Does that mean Juno? I don't know. Does that mean Ethereum? I don't know. No idea. They might figure out some way, but as of now, they just continue to they're promising app support on both the new Terra and on what's called Terra Classic.
If Astroport does go cross-chain and goes into the more of the Cosmos edge, it'll be interesting to see how it develops kind of a relationship of competing with Osmosis.
Yeah, and I'm excited about the multi-chain future here. I mean, Osmosis is positioning itself as the DEX chain.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we'll see an Osmosis versus Astroport war. Who
Yeah.
knows? But as of now, no plans for that from Astroport. So Mars passed its proposal to shut down smart contracts on Terra. You might want to look in if you had some kind of investment in Mars or some kind of thing involved with Mars. You might want to look as to what that entails, right? And I do know that I think that UST deposits in Mars are among those honored UST like holders from pre-attack. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I'm pretty sure that's the case. But it's important that they say don't buy Mars tokens or make any other financial decision based on this announcement. We expect Mars holders on Terra Classic to be credited with an airdrop of governance tokens for the new system. But the token economics have yet to be determined, and future deployments on other blockchains, right, are mentioned. Mars had a pretty serious UST dependence, so it's uncertain what the future will be. I know there's gigabrains involved there. You might see Mars again, and if you do, and you had Mars tokens, basically hold on to your keys, right? That's the message here. Hold on to your keys. In the future, there might be something coming out for you. This seems like a panic tweet. Sell your Kuji while you can. But the point that Chris is making here is that the snapshots already happened.
Yeah.
If you've held Kuji,
Yes.
Kuji's going to actually deploy their own blockchain in an attempt to be like an inter-chain, like liquidation and other things engine. And so Kujira says, look, buying now on Terra is pointless in terms of getting tokens on the new chain. We can't stop a free market, though. And as Midas points out, all these tokens are up. Some of them like ridiculously up on the idea that there might be snapshots and migrations and futures and so on these things. But for Kuji, no, don't buy it and try to get into a snapshot. But if our snapshot's already been taken, feel free to sell it if you can recoup something from that. Again, none of this is financial advice. This is what Chris, the communications billboard, is saying. And Neb, the snapshot is happening today, May 25th for Neb. So if you had Neb and you're waiting for a snapshot, that has happened as of May 25th. And after that, forget it. What's the deal with Sigma over here, Evan?
Yeah, so as far as I know, Sigma, they're going to be rolling with Terra V2. I just saw like a very quick announcement somewhere. There's been so many announcements and tweets and channels and stuff that I can't quite recall where it was said, but I'm pretty sure they are going to be an early supporter exclusively on Terra V2. Now, does that mean they won't pivot into multiple ecosystems, especially in Cosmos, as we mentioned, which is, more technically feasible for a lot of these people building? I'm sure we'll see some pivots and some changes in the future, but I expect to see Sigma rolling strong with Terra V2.
All right, and the Spectrum, if you're into Spectrum, the Spectrum snapshot, May 26th. I don't know exactly what time that's going to be, but that's May 26th. I don't see anything else here mentioned. I know that while protocols like Nexus and Anchor and like Mirror and stuff, I mean, as far as I know, they all intend to be over on the new chain. I don't know snapshot details at this time. So keep an eye out on those projects and wait for an announcement to come out. We'll talk about all the other projects listed here as well. Orion has actually been working on withdrawals and executing them as WUST withdrawals, allowing them to be processed, for what WST is worth. I don't know the destination of the Orion token. I'm looking through their Twitter here. I haven't noticed. The validator's still running, as we've mentioned, and I guess that there will be more information coming soon. Stader Labs, any Luna X will be airdropped to Terra Wallet addresses. It's one of those staking derivatives we mentioned, or at least the allocation, right, on the new Luna chain will be airdropped. I don't know about the Stader token. But let's quickly move. I'm driving all these guys. Let's quickly move on to NFTs really quick. NFTs are interesting because the NFTs had nothing to do with UST.
I mean, personally, when everything kind of fell apart, I was just left with a bag of worthless UST and JPEGs. So I think that the majority of my portfolio is allocated for the future of all these NFT projects.
The Derby Stars team, they've been released this really awesome new art where they're going to do seasonal, maybe a la Animal Crossing. I don't know if it's going to be real time or not, but some seasonal art coming out for all their racetracks. And we'll see the Derby Stars hopefully deploying a game soon. We don't know exactly where they're going, but keep an eye out on the Derby Stars Twitter. Deviants, similar, looking for a new home and focused on bringing all the NFTs over to wherever their new chain is. They had a game live, a PvP trading card game that launched PvP on Monday of the crash. And so the community waiting to make sure all the cards and packs and boosters move to the new chain, whatever destination chain that is. TerraFloki has rebranded to MetaFrens and says right in their top Twitter, "See you on Terra 2.0." So don't take their rebrand as a move away from Terra. They're coming on to Terra 2.0. They also had a game that was active and more games coming, challenges, tournaments, and so on with NFTs. And you can see planets here as well, and a little Floriers and Flizzards and so on.
Yeah, so OnePlanet, they just announced this as we were recording. OnePlanet, they're going to move to Polygon. As we know, Polygon has a pretty extensive fund that they've been kind of offering for Terra refugees and protocols that are looking to move over to there. One thing about OnePlanet is they've been dedicated kind of throughout this to helping some of the other NFT projects, and OnePlanet being a marketplace, not necessarily an NFT project themselves. They are looking to, in the coming months, start providing migration and sustainability support to projects that fill out the application form. So if you check out this tweet thread, they've got a link there to an Airtable link. If you are an NFT creator and you're in the Terra space and you're looking for alternatives, I would highly advise going over there. Nothing but good things to say about OnePlanet from any NFT creators, from people that know these guys. We know them. We've met them in person. They're an excellent team, and I wish them all the best over on Polygon. I'm excited to see what OnePlanet turns into over there. It's I think it's still a very promising project. So
Polygon has been like kind of an untapped NFT like area. No real major project has kind of gone over there. So OnePlanet kind of getting over there, getting ahead of the curve, and also being able to just kind of bring in a new wave of decentralized NFT marketplaces. I think that's super in line with the DeFi scene that's going on over in Polygon. So super just excited to see what projects that they were going to be minting ahead of time before this whole crash. I want to see what projects head on over there to see what kind of stays with the OnePlanet team.
Yeah. That said, we've talked about the projects that are, the teams, the builders, their future. We've talked about the Terra community, like a more base layer, like the blockchain's future. We've talked a little bit about where some of the Terra blockchain builders are going and so on. But that leaves a lot of people who just believed in this and they had UST, right? And so one of the reasons we spent so much time on V2 is to show that the new network, it might not go anywhere. Who knows? Like, it's like a startup. It's uncertain. It's like a game. You don't know. There might be traction. There might not. But if it does, there's a significant portion of that network that will be given to people who had savings in Anchor ahead of the attack, who had Luna staked, including staking derivatives ahead of the attack, who had held through and had Luna or UST after the attack. So significant portions, some of it on a vesting schedule, some of it not, given to people. So it might not be, it's definitely not like a promise to make everyone who held savings whole, but it's something, right? It's a large portion of the network given to these people who participated, who believed in Luna, and who are excited about all these projects on the Terra ecosystem. So I really feel for people who, like all the builders are coming together and figuring out ways forward. And that's what builders do, right? They have problems they encounter and they figure out a way around them. I really feel for people who potentially had, faith in this stable coin and had a lot of savings in it. And that was all they did. They had a standard job, right? Like they worked, I don't know, they were a repair person of some kind, or a teacher,
A bagel
or
maker.
a bagel maker. Yeah. Like our
Yeah.
friend here. And or a solar engineer,
Yeah.
right? And they put money, they followed the ecosystem, maybe, or maybe not. Maybe they used an application that like I don't want to maybe they used an application like Alice or Tick, or one of these like hold UST in an app things.
Yeah.
And those people, we really feel for you. We're in the same boat. We're majorly down, personal and as a company, because we had faith in these things too,
Yeah.
And but the community has come together and decided that whatever it builds in the future with all these protocols and some of these NFT projects, some of these other projects and so on coming in, and whatever it builds in the future, that those people, you guys that had UST or AUST, Anchor UST savings, or Luna staked or whatever, will have a large piece of that. So it's not a promise, but it is at least some hope for the future and future recovery, future upside in that direction. And so that leads me to one final question before we start to wrap this up. What about the stablecoin? We spent so long talking about so much time talking about why a decentralized economy needs decentralized money. And that was the Terra logo that's shown in the branding in various places in Washington, D.C. And just a decentralized economy needs decentralized money, right? And I want to share a tweet thread, and it doesn't necessarily reflect my own thoughts, but I want to share this thread from Red Phone Crypto. And he's I think gets it right on the nail, hits a nail right on the head when he says, people like to act like Luna investors were just low IQ, but most knew the risks. And maybe some people didn't fully process the risks, but there's a reason we talked about going to zero and don't invest more than you can afford and had disclaimers and so on. I understand that you can still be not happy, even despite disclaimers, right? Like disclaimers aren't sudden keys to happiness, but most knew the risks, right? But that might not even be the case for a lot of UST buyers that are Red Phone Crypto. And it's true. People might have been into Alice or Tick or Cash or Kato, or using a product which didn't even tell them it was using Anchor behind it, or using Orion over on Ethereum or something like that with exposure to UST. And weren't aware of these possibilities, right? Red Phone goes through a lot talking about like Anchor is not a Ponzi. And indeed, we didn't talk much about Anchor Protocol, but Anchor Protocol's social has mostly been saying, hey, there's still opportunity to withdraw BETH via wormhole and helping people out. And we can't find any fault in Anchor Protocol technically, or like, with what they did in this crash. I mean, it seems like Anchor was a victim just as much as it was, just as much as other protocols here. But Red Phone says Anchor was one of the greatest onboarding tools crypto has ever seen, for better or for worse. Simple to use. I mean, most DeFi protocols require Normie to do 40 hours of research and 28 questions in Discord a few times to just make it understandable and usable. Like Evan was talking about, great UX. And that might not even be the dev's fault on those other projects. It's having to do ridiculous things and use ridiculous language to get around regulatory murk. but they don't achieve simplicity for that reason. Anchor did. But here's the real point I want to hit. Lots of people think Terra's collapse mean the algo stable dream is dead. I should probably agree, but I don't. Here's why. The dollar and all fiats pegged to it are no different. A similar attack as what happened to UST happened to the Bank of England, in a famous George Soros move, broke the Bank of England. And, it's not the exact same kind of attack, but a very similar event.
But it's literally been coined the Soros style attack.
Yeah, the
now.
Soros style
Right.
attack.
Yeah.
The dollar and all fiats pegged to it are no different. They can be manipulated at will, but there is more nuance. The dollar plot supply comes from some algo elements like inflation print, unemployment, and so on, help dictate tweaks. And then also a human element, Fed members who vote down rate changes, and a marketing element, right? And the US government and its military. Okay, so not just algo backing, but a lot of backing. But the dollar, of course, has sustainable demand. It pays taxes at core. You have to have dollars in order to pay taxes. You previously had to have dollars in order to buy oil, right? Maybe less and less true as the world moves forward, but you need it to exchange in real life for things. Terra was working towards some level of real world integration, but it was years off, right? We're working towards it, but it wasn't there yet. And since algos can't integrate within real life as much, they're more like fiat on uppers. Everything happens faster, but Redphone thinks they still have a shot. Backed money is constrained money. The algo box is a problem, but we shouldn't say it's unsolvable. Bitcoin, the Byzantine generals problem was considered impossible, but it didn't stop Satoshi and others from creating Byzantine fault tolerance. If you don't know what that means, don't worry about it. A problem that people thought was unsolvable, like automobiles going faster than 25 miles an hour, or the sound barrier being broken, was solvable. So the algo dream, maybe if it had a better name, more people will try to tackle it. He says the algo lemmings dilemma, right? And Do Kwon tried to solve it by focusing on the demand side. If you make demand strong enough and stable enough, you keep people in. Maybe we've done something else, we being the community. Maybe there could have been terms added, minimum lockups to anchor deposits or something else. But the focus was on demand. A lot of crypto founders leave it to the market to generate demand. That's backwards, and Do Kwon understood that, says Redphone. So it's something that he's going to think about a lot more with future investments. Not just is it interesting, but will it have demand? Will it create? How will it create and sustain demand? These are questions we kind of answered here, but what we didn't answer is what happens if that demand disappears overnight? Most fiat collapses are the result of gross abuse of supply by whoever controls the printing press, but algos are transparent and on-chain. They could become more reliable than fiat, more predictable than fiat, which can be abused behind the scenes with politics. It might be decades off, but it seems likely that it might happen. Terra's UX was genuinely amazing. Wallets, bridge, swaps, Thorchain, 2 years ahead of other networks. All the other networks I use, I completely agree with this.
Yeah.
Every day across the industry, UX is improving dramatically. And he argues, I'm just going to follow through this thread. I think this thread is amazing.
Yeah.
While we didn't lack information on Terra, maybe we suffered from too much information, having an answer that sounded reasonable for every critique. But the ecosystem grew so fast and maybe unbalanced some of those arguments. Anchor grew so gargantuan that, it chewing through millions of dollars in reserves each day. That said, one major problem for algo stables and indeed all of crypto is the uncertain regulatory environment. We have to create these unwieldy governance processes that are great for decent democratization, but terrible for handling crises. Like there's a lot of conspiracy out there about that final sale where TFL made an action with Bitcoin on like the foundation's behalf, which it was legally allowed to do based on the agreement, but still there wasn't an LFG vote for that final action, right? Well, that's because like it's terrible for handling crises. You had to call everybody up while the price is collapsing and try to get an emergency action. It's very difficult. So DAOs need the capability to have representative democracy, to have signers, but being able to do things without fearing regulatorily that they're going to get nailed to a cross. People are villainizing Doe, but hey, says Redphone Crypto, I still love him. I don't think he was out to F anyone over. I think he was a crazy-ass monetary experiment he was trying. I think he was trying a crazy-ass monetary experiment that he believed in. He thought he could solve the Algo Lemmings dilemma. Maybe he didn't adjust his mental model when Anchor got bigger, like me. I also think the cult of personality is at the heart of a lot of successful experiments. Elon, the most obvious example. Satoshi. Without Vitalik, would I love ETH? No, hard to say. The visionaries carry the fire down the mountain. They show us its awesome light. So if an algo stable could be integrated with the real world and Hubons could choose to get paid in algos and spread them on bread and roofs, a 72-hour meltdown becomes much harder. It would embed itself in the economic system. Loans for in-real goods that they couldn't unwind in seconds like that, right? Sell-off velocity slows, faith increases, liquidity increases, stickiness increases, and so on. I'm not going to continue for the whole thread, but here's the final point I want to leave with everybody. All those hurt by the meltdown, I hope this doesn't make you quit crypto. Most .com startups disappeared in 1999, 2000, but the internet continued, right? We definitely lost capital on UST implosion. It's not the first time we've gotten wrecked, and we hope it's not the last. If it's the last, it means that we haven't been taking a chance on anything. Risk and reward are intertwined. There's a DNA helix, and there's something in my core that must always touch both sides of the ladder. It's kind of a weird way to state that, but he's saying the same thing. If I don't get wrecked ever again, it means I've turned into a cowardly chicken. It means that I'm not taking risks anymore. It means I've become cynical, extremely cynical about the future. And that's the final thread he says here. We can't let one disaster turn us into reasonable lumps of nothingness. We're still here. And so we still have more to learn. We still have more to build. Beautifully said, maybe not by me, but by Redphone Crypto. That's one of the links. I'm not going to put all these links in the show notes, but that's one of the links I'll put in the show notes. Maybe even the future does include an algo stablecoin once a lot of these problems are figured out, or some form of decentralized money that learns from all this.
Mm-hmm. I mean, obviously, UST, and in its current state, the way that it was designed is not going to be that future of decentralized money. It's just simply not going to be that currency. This attack vector was revealed and it has already been shown. There's going to have to be a new model constructed if the algo stable wants to come back. There will need to be that another Do-Kwon figure. Maybe he even comes back with his own design. Maybe there is a new stablecoin created in Terra V2. No one knows if there will be. But I do think that the ethos, the vision, the passion that we all felt, that everyone was building around, and everyone saw the vision that we were building around decentralized money, that still exists. That passion, that fire, that drive, that's still there among all the teams, among myself with my passion for crypto. And so seeing UST kind of collapse and no longer become that future of decentralized money that I had become so enamored with, it's just devastating. It's devastating on a emotional level, and it's devastating on my own ideological level. And so I just can't wait. So this kind of goes back to the other portion of like, if I'm not willing to take the risks, how are you going to make something incredible? If you're not willing to make something that everyone is saying that is going to fail, that is going to completely go to zero, or it's just not going to succeed, then you're never going to create anything incredible, because everything that was once created that became incredible was criticized and was critiqued and became something much bigger than what everyone had anticipated in the beginning. And that's what I thought UST was going to do. And I thought that was what was going to happen. But clearly there's more insanity that has to go back to the builders. And I just can't wait to see where we go on with this vision of decentralized money.
So let's pivot a little bit here. We've talked about Terra V2. We've talked about all the projects. We've talked about decentralized money. We've talked about what happened and what is maybe going to happen in the future. So what is going to happen in the future with Bites Digital Group?
Yeah. So Terra Bites, I mean, I think most people know Pete and I and Joseph as like guys in front of the camera. But we did do a lot behind the scenes, and Pete and I have been in other ecosystems before Terra, running validators, building tooling and educational content and stuff like that. And we, interestingly enough, just as Deviants had their PvP launch on Black Monday, we were actually had meetings scheduled the same week with our branding vendor to basically help us not do a hard rebrand or pivot away from Terra at all, but we wanted to rebrand into Bites Digital Group, so that we can kind of consolidate all of these things that we do with secret validators and osmosis validators, and some of the tooling and stuff that we built that's cross chain. And so for us, we're kind of already moving in that direction. This, I think, has helped, because I think with a lot of people in the crypto space, or the Web3 space, as the new people like to coin it, you end up spinning a lot of plates and you get pulled in a lot of different directions. And for us, this helped us drop a lot of those plates and focus. And so, nothing's official yet, but the content is I'm pretty confident is going to continue. It's going to be a lot more broad. It's obviously not going to just be focused on Terra V2, although I do think that's going to be a part of it, and it's going to be interesting for us to watch and see how that ecosystem grows. And then Pete and I, we're actually very excited about some products that we're working on. Actually, just one specific product. Like I said, we dropped a lot of plates, and the silver lining maybe in all this is that now we have a real excuse to focus our energy and our efforts, and we're not as comfortable as we were, right? We actually are back to eating ramen and staying in Super 8s and and all that good stuff. So and a piece of advice for people who are out there, I mean, if you're down bad, I've been through it before. I mean, we definitely have a huge black eye. Luckily, we did hedge a bit, and we've talked about this publicly about don't be afraid to take profits and look at I mean, whatever. We're not going to get into it, but if you're feeling like everything out there is a scam, or you have bad luck and nothing's working out for you, I tell you the worst mistake you can make is if you're passionate about Web3 and you think that you found a good community here. The worst mistake you can make now is to walk away from everything, and that's I think during sort of the boring cycle of like the last bear market, I became unfocused on Web3, and I missed a lot of huge opportunities there that I wish I would have like really focused and just stuck with it. So it seems bad now, and this might not be like you might not want to hear this, but it can actually still get worse. And the macro environment is brutal, but the cycle is going to come back. I am more convinced than ever with the amount of talent and the amount of just progression of different, like the tech, basically in it for the tech meme. But just how far it's progressed even since like 2017. I mean, 2017 was white papers. And people were getting insane valuations based on white papers. And now that we see tools that's like actually on my phone, being able to go and spend or do peer-to-peer transactions and just everything. I mean, not just in the Terra ecosystem, but everywhere, even in the EVM world. Bitcoins is freaking legal tender, or whatever the hell I always forget the term.
It's official currency.
Yeah,
couple of places,
yeah, in multiple countries. I mean, that's something that like you would never dream of. So, that's just my advice to anybody out there that if you're building, it sucks. Take some time off. Make sure you're feeling good. You don't want to burn yourself out, obviously. But don't walk away, especially. And I don't even really think that a lot of people in the Terra community, at least like in our network, I don't even think they're at risk of doing that because of how strong the community is and how much people support each other. And we had such a good thing. And I think people realize that they can get that back. You know what I mean? I think that nobody, I can't speak for everybody, but I don't blame anybody but myself for what I've lost. And again, I'm not counting on Terra V2 to make myself whole. My focus now is just focus on what I can control, and I guarantee you we'll be back where we were at, and then we'll go beyond that. So I'm confident. It's an opportunity. It's the people that over these next, like, let's say it's May 25th, 2022. You can tweet like, remind me of this in 2 years. 2 years from now, we might crab walk. Ethan Bitcoin might crab walk for 2 years. That's when it sucks, because it's boring, and it gets boring. But if you have something that you can focus on, something that you can build, just keep leaning on your community, keep networking. Trust me, when Bitcoin 2023 comes around and the tickets are selling for $50 from scalpers on the sidewalk, that's actually where you want to be, because that's the time to go and to get your positions in and get your network and really dedicate yourself to this industry before the hype comes back. And then you can kind of, hey, you just realize, hey, remember when we didn't take profit on that one really good play? Remember when we went all in on that one thing? Maybe now we should like learn our lesson. And so like, it's kind of a cliche or something that I've seen, like a common trope that people have been throwing around. But if you did lose everything, consider it your tuition paid for the next cycle. I mean, that sucks, but you definitely aren't going to make the same mistake twice if you feel the way that a lot of people feel after this. So that's my personal advice to everyone, not financial advice or legal advice or any of that good stuff. So
Well, that's it, folks. We've all kind of weighed in how much this has hit us and hit our communities, and how tough we feel it's going to be, but also how bright we feel it's eventually going to be in the future. And our path forward through it. We're going to continue putting out content here. The topics might expand quite a bit, might focus a little bit. We'll have some potential announcements soon as far as the directions of the channel. Joseph is going to be sticking around here as well. And we hope to see you all next time.